Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a strong climbing team for the Open Grade League. This team is not a team that I created. This is a team that was recommended to me in a comment from a viewer on a previous video. This team, it's a pretty standard strong meta team. Credilli, Blastoise, and Feraligatr. I tested it out on my wife's account, Piplup Detective, and ended up going 18 wins and 2 losses in the first 4 sets with the team to climb from 2850s up to 3083 elo. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's take a look at this team in action in the Open Grade League. Hopping into the first match, picking up a bit of a tricky lead, Credilli into Shadow Alolan Ninetales. Not only does Ninetales have a significant pacing advantage, but it can hit for big super effective damage with Shadow Weather Ball. So my plan here is to play out the ones and then get aggressive and send out Feraligatr. The glue that holds this team together is the normal Feraligatr safe switch. Non-Shadow Feraligatr is actually preferred right now because the non-Shadow can actually win the zeros against a counter-swap Furret. My opponent is going to save the Ninetales, and out comes Gastrodon. Feraligatr is going to do great here. Feraligatr's energy is exceedingly helpful, as I'm able to get back-to-back Hydro Cannons. Hydro Cannon number 2 into the Gastrodon does get the shield, so Feraligatr was able to put a serious dent into my opponent's team. Back in comes Credilli, and Credilli just simply does not have to respect Water Pulse. Water Pulse is going to land, Credilli will outpace, get to the Grass Knot, and now it's going to be Blastoise versus the world in the endgame, but Blastoise has that ever-important shield advantage. Blastoise hits the field, Ninetales farms up a ton of energy, and I will use the final shield here in case they Dazzling Gleam. They do. In the back, they have Galarian Corsola, and up this much energy, Blastoise is poised to sweep. Blastoise will fire off Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon in this matchup, as it'll be 3 Hydro Cannons needed to knock out the bulky Corsola. Corsola is able to land the Nightshade, getting the Blastoise pretty low, but not low enough, as Blastoise now is locked and loaded with the back-to-back Hydros. Hydro number 2 is going to be taking the knockout. All that's left is going to be the Ninetales. Ninetales gets farmed down, and that's a good game. Hopping into the next match, picking up a very good lead, Credilli into Stunfisk. Anytime a Stunfisk stays in, it's always worthwhile to overfarm as the Credilli, because if they're staying in, there's high likelihood they're going to try and go for a catch. So I just keep farming. They try for a Grass Knot catch onto Corviknight. I'm going to bank close to 100 energy on the Credilli and send in Feraligatr. I decide to shield here because it's highly likely they go for the payback, but they end up going for the air cutter. More often than not in this matchup, Corviknight will try and land the payback because then they can just spam air cutters, but unfortunately, I actually don't get that call right in this game. And that's going to cost me, as now I lost a ton of HP on Feraligatr. I'm going to continue to farm with Feraligatr. Opponent is going to be switching out, taking advantage of the slight desync in the switch timer, and making a catch onto the Stunfisk. Stunfisk will not appreciate the Grass Knot, and Credilli has the back-to-back charge attacks loaded. That forces my opponent to no shield, and now what are they going to be bringing in? It's going to be a Shadow Talonflame, and this is one area where this team is incredible. This team is amazing at shutting down basically every flying type that you could ever encounter, just because every Pokemon on the team can hit flyers for super effective. So they had Talonflame and Corviknight, and they're just getting absolutely destroyed as the Party Hat Blastoise hits the field. Blastoise shields up the fly. Opponent, they realize they're getting fully farmed down, so they will resign the match. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Credilli into Dartrix. The tricky thing about Dartrix is Dartrix can make a Brave Bird on the CMP tied to a Rock Tomb. And Brave Bird, while it will not knock out, will do most of my health bar. I'm very okay taking the shield advantage and then looking to get aggressive and sending out the Feraligatr. It's going to be a simultaneous switch Feraligatr into Empoleon. Feraligatr farming up a ton of energy, and Empoleon is a weak spot for this team, as both Credilli and Blastoise are not a big fan. Feraligatr does great into Empoleon, so this matchup honestly works out really nicely for me. My plan here is simple. I want to try and exit this matchup with residual energy to be able to threaten the Dartrix. So instead of going for the CMP tie, which is IV dependent, I'm just going to shield and farm up to the back-to-back Hydros. Hydro Cannon will take the knockout, opponent's going to bring back in the Dartrix, and I will opt for a bait. Ice Beam would easily knock out, so I should be able to grab a shield from my opponent, and now in comes Credilli. Credilli is going to get very valuable fast move pressure, and I think I'm just going to save the final shield for the Blastoise, as Blastoise should make a Hydro Cannon before my opponent is able to make it to the double Seed Bomb. Dartrix does have quite a bit of energy stored, and they're going to be launching the Seed Bomb here. I put up the shield, I go for the Hydro Cannon, and there's no switch out from my opponent. Hydro Cannon into the Dartrix, gets them very low. In the back is a shiny Carbink, and we are looking to be in a pretty good spot. Our team triple counters Carbink, so they tried to hold the Carbink till the very last second in case I had a weakness to Carbink on the team, but I do not. Blastoise is going to be able to launch a second Hydro Cannon, and then I can just switch into Feraligatr as they make the Moonblast. Even if they didn't throw there and tried to predict the catch, my Feraligatr would have just Shadow Clawed them down. So either way, there's just no way out for my opponent. Back in comes the Dartrix. Dartrix is very low on health, so it's easily going to get knocked out by the Hydro Cannon. They were just shy of that Seed Bomb, and were able to take the win. Credilli into Galarian Corsola in the next match. So Credilli does win the Zero Shield versus Galarian Corsola. I think ideally as Credilli, you would love to get them debuffed, get them low on health, low on energy, and then look to get aggressive and pivot into the Feraligatr. My opponent is going to get debuffed, and they stay in the matchup for now, which is preferred. I think as the Corsola, the correct play is probably just to get debuffed and bank the Nightshade for later and pivot out. So the fact that they're staying in works out very nicely for me. Rock Tomb is going to connect. That's going to be getting my opponent pretty low, and now they're going to be firing off their energy. I should look to get aggressive and pivot into the Feraligatr here. So I'm going to throw 2, send in the Feraligatr. They're very, very low, and out comes Azumarill. Azumarill is a rare Pokemon that can actually deal with the Hydro Cannon spam from Feraligatr. Feraligatr still does have a generally favorable matchup here because they just cannot bubble you down after a Play Rough lands from full HP, but the fact that they're able to tank so many charge moves is a definite plus for the opponent. Azumarill will go for the Play Rough, and that just does not put me into bubble down range. They're going to have to throw again, or I'm going to be able to get to 2 more Hydro Cannons and secure a knockout. So Hydro Cannon is going to land, I get to yet another Hydro Cannon, and the Feraligatr spam is so real. Hydro Cannon will take the knockout. In the back is Empoleon, and this is not what Blastoise was hoping to see. This is going to be a very uphill battle. The good news is I do still have a catch available. The Credilli, it's very low HP, but if I can catch a Hydro Cannon, that would potentially put me in a pretty decent spot. So now I get to start unleashing Hydro Cannons, the battle of the water starters, to determine if we can go 4-0 in this set. The shield comes up on the Drill Peck. I'm now going to go for the Hydro Cannon, and my opponent will have to start putting up shields. The thing to keep in mind is they will have a catch opportunity as well. I switch into Credilli, and they will fire off energy. I was very close to a Grass Knot, so that forces my opponent to throw. Now back in comes the Blastoise. I'm over farming massively, watching for that catch, and my opponent does not go for it. Drill Peck does get shielded. I'm at 100. I'm forced to throw, and they get the game-winning catch. No. I was so careful, but once you hit 100, you kind of have to throw or you'll go over 100. And that ended up being a bit of a predictable throw by me, and that allows my opponent to take home the win. We saw the problem Pokemon of Empoleon, and we were nearly able to overcome it, but unfortunately, great catch by my opponent, and we will take the loss. We see a very familiar lead in game number 5, leading Credilli into Stunfisk. My opponent safe switches into Fearow, and Stunfisk plus Flying Core is very, very common right now. It's one of the reasons why I really like Credilli, and honestly this entire team is going to do well into that core. Not only does the entire team hit Stunfisk for super effective, but the entire team also hits Flyers for super effective as well. So I tank a Drill Peck, I debuff them and get a shield with Rock Tomb, and now I bring in the Blastoise. I'm going to throw 2 rollouts and the move, trying to maximize as much overfarm as possible. If my opponent no shields, this is going to knock out, and I exit with extra residual energy. Back in comes the Stunfisk, and since I have that extra residual, my opponent can now not overfarm nearly as much as they typically would. So they will fire off their discharge, and I decide, you know what? I can force the final shield or just knock out the Stunfisk. So I may as well put this Blastoise energy to use. So now my opponent has to decide, are they willing to let the Stunfisk go? They are. In the back is going to be Annihilate, and I send out the Feraligatr. I should have just clicked switch instantly, as then I could have outpaced, but I paused for a second to see what got brought in, and that means I'm actually getting outpaced. This game will now come down to charge attack priority, Feraligatr versus Annihilate, which is IV dependent, but this account has an absolutely awful Feraligatr, 584, so we win charge attack priority over Annihilate, take the knockout, and win the game. hopping into the next match, picking up an amazing lead, Credilli into Corviknight. The thing to watch for in this matchup is the sand attack damage. You can see the sand attacks are basically doing nothing, and that's because my opponent has a default or high rank IV Corviknight. If you run a very attack-weighted Corviknight, you can actually breakpoint Credilli and do 2 damage per sand attack instead of 1, which makes this matchup a lot closer. But since my opponent does not have it, this is just a completely dominant win for the Credilli. Credilli gonna be hit with air cutter after air cutter, and it just does not matter. In this lead matchup, I like to throw a few rock tombs and then eventually pivot out, because Credilli energy will always be strong into the backline of a Corviknight lead, because Corviknight cannot have a bug steel type behind it. So I'm gonna bank energy, send in for Alligator, and out comes the Dedenne. Imagine how bad this could have gotten if I didn't bait out this Dedenne. Dedenne could have swept me, but now I should be in a pretty nice spot. I have a ton of energy on my Credilli, and my opponent plays to a CMP tie that they do not win. This is a CMP tie that is favored for Dedenne, but the bad IV for Alligator strikes again, and they lose a ton of health in the process. I'm gonna bring in Credilli, look for a 1 shield farm down. Realistically, waiting my clock there was a misplay, as that actually allows my opponent to pivot out and snipe with the Corviknight. I'm gonna be no shielding, my opponent goes for the air cutter, and now I'll look to farm down with the Blastoise. My opponent leaves with a parting gift of an air cutter, but it's a very low damage move, so it's a small price to pay for a 2 rollout head start. And that energy head start will be massive in the endgame, as Shadow Dusknoir is revealed as my opponent's final Pokemon. I know a Hydro Cannon will not knock out, so this game will come down to me sniping with the move that I have on Credilli. It looks like my Credilli is actually healthy enough to survive 1 Astonish, so I'm going to snipe and throw the Acid. This covers for them switching and trying to catch, and they do just that. So now I can just throw the Grass Knot on alignment, take the knockout against the Dusknoir, and we're able to secure that win. We move to the next match, leading Credilli into Stunfisk once again. I believe this is not a Stunfisk plus Flyer team, this is a different Stunfisk team, and it is, as they safe switch Corsola. Safe switch Corsola is surprisingly strong into this team, even though we have Feraligatr, which can hit it for super effective damage. If Feraligatr really wants to, Feraligatr can always shield up and eventually farm down and keep switch. But I don't necessarily need switch advantage, so I end up no shielding and going for the Hydro Cannon. I thought I would survive this Astonish on 1 HP. It turns out that I didn't, and I actually got bailed out there by a damage registration error. To be safe, what I should have done is just under tap the Hydro Cannon, so that was a bit needlessly risky by me for 1 Shadow Claw of damage. In comes Blastoise into the Corsola. Corsola is gonna make a second Nightshade, so I tank 1, I shield 1, but I know that even without switch advantage, Blastoise energy will absolutely run roughshod over this Stunfisk. So back in comes the Stunfisk, there's a Hydro Cannon, immediately followed by another Hydro as well. If they shield, I'm 1 off the next, but they do not. In the back, they have Shadow Scizor, so losing switch advantage is a little bit tricky. I think that I need the rollout damage to put this into Rock Tomb range, so I stay in with the Blastoise. I don't get the Hydro Cannon, but the damage has been done. Shadow Scizor is a very glassy Pokemon, and the rollouts that landed are enough plus the acid damage to put it into range for Rock Tomb. So I no shield, knowing that 1 charge attack will not knock me out, but Rock Tomb will be knocking out the Scizor and securing the game. We've got mirror leads in the next match, except no we don't, because this is a Bullet Seed Credilli into my Acid Credilli. Bullet Seed will allow my opponent to outpace if they throw on alignment, and that's exactly what they're going to do. As the Bullet Seed Credilli, that is the correct play, because it doesn't actually end up messing up your timing. You're still able to outpace to the second charge attack. So I will get outpaced, and the moment they've emptied all their energy, you probably know what's coming next. In comes Feraligatr, they throw a Bullet Seed, out comes the Dedenne, and again, that's such a big bait out. If you're running like an ABB double water style team, you need to make sure you're checking in the back for any potential problem Pokemon. We saw a previous Dedenne try and cap tie the Feraligatr and regret it. This trainer is not taking any chances. They are not risking that cap tie. I decide to shield back after they shield, and I'm able to land the Hydro Cannon. I really want this Dedenne off the field, so I actually do a bit of a risky play. I decide to shield and then under tap the Hydro. If they end up no shielding, they'll get knocked out. If they shield, I can combo with the Credilli. They no shield and send in Feraligatr. I throw 4 Shadow Claws and then snipe with the Rock Tomb on Credilli. This is going to force a shield from my opponent. they're going to look to massively overfarm and exit with energy. And this is actually a scenario where having 2 back Pokemon with the exact same typing will put me at a big advantage, because I'm going to bring in the Blastoise, but my opponent will look at the top right and see the typing, and based off the typing being water, they're going to undertap the Hydro Cannon because they didn't want to risk CMP against the Feraligatr. So that gives me a free rollout. In comes Credilli, and now I can go for the back-breaking catch onto Feraligatr. Feraligatr will get knocked out by the Grass Knot. Back in comes the Blastoise. I throw 3 rollouts and the Hydro, and this is the exact overfarm that I need to outpace their Feraligatr. In comes Feraligatr, we get the Skull Bash, and this game is over. With a little bit of subterfuge, by having 2 Pokemon in the back with the exact same typing, we're able to secure the win. Hopping to the final match, leading Credilli into Altaria. Opponent save switches into Empoleon. That's a bad matchup, so I bail out and send in Feraligatr. And this is another CMP tie that most Feraligatrs will not win, but this very bad IV Feraligatr actually will. Now that the Empoleon knows that they do not win CMP, they should be throwing 4 into the Drill Peck, so I'm just going to look to overfarm. But my opponent risks the CMP tie once again, to my absolute shock, so that is a misplay by me, as I definitely should have just CMP tied them, and that way I wouldn't have had to go down a shield. So now I'm down a shield, which is a little bit unfortunate, but keeping switch advantage is still nice, because Altaria can do pretty well against Credilli in the zeros, but when it's not the zeros, then things get pretty uncomfortable for the Altaria. So Altaria will get a healthy farm down. In the back is going to be Shadow Scizor, and I immediately send out the Blastoise. If you switch fast enough into the Blastoise, then Scizor is not able to win. I shield, they go for a Night Slash bait, but they're going to end up with 6 bullet punches of energy. And the important thing to note is that you need 7 for the first Trailblaze. So this is their 6th bullet punch. They just do not have the energy needed to win this game. It's only going to be a Night Slash. Now as the Blastoise, to be safe, I throw 1 and the move. This Hydro Cannon will be knocking out, and then my switch timer's up so I can bring back in the Credilli. Credilli will get outpaced, they can go for the Sky Attack, but I'll get big damage with the Rock Tomb, and I'm pretty close to a Hydro Cannon on the Blastoise as well. And while Rock Tomb is not going to knock out, it just does too much damage. Altaria realizes they are in Hydro Cannon range, and they will resign the match. And now some final thoughts on the team as a whole. I think this team really excels against flying types and Stunfisk, and that's a pretty common archetype, people pairing flying types with Stunfisk, as the entire team being able to hit both flyers and Stunfisk for super effective means that if you run into either one of those Pokemon, you're going to be pretty far ahead in most matches. I will say this team does have some weaknesses. Charge-a-Bug energy can be quite scary for this team. Also, fighters like Annihilate or Pangoro would be really tough to beat. Those aren't super common, but they are definitely around. Obviously, during the 18-2 run, the only fighter I saw was a Beware, and that was actually one of the 2 losses. Unfortunately, I did not have the Beware game recorded, but it was a Beware. I had to go down 2 shields on the lead, and then they ended up having a Dedenne in the back that I was able to make it very close, but unfortunately down 2 shields, I wasn't quite able to do enough to secure that win. So definitely a wild game, and even though it was a very unorthodox fighter, it was still a big problem for this team. So all in all, I think this is a pretty solid team. I've had people in my Discord have really good results with it, so I think it's a pretty solid team. Now, with people trying out this team once the video is released, if you're looking to counter this team, I would say something like a Charge-a-Bug plus Annihilate core would probably be an absolute nightmare for this team. So if you're wanting to try it, I wish you luck, and if you're trying to counter it, then that would be my recommendation. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.